Hey there, and welcome back to Cheating Tales Lab. We're so glad to have you here today. We hope you enjoy this story we've prepared for you. So sit back, relax, and let's get into it. Marcus Steele's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel as he navigated through the rush hour traffic. The past week had been a grueling marathon of stress tests, computer simulations, and endless revisions. But it was worth it. His revolutionary earthquake-resistant building design was going to change the face of structural engineering. As he turned onto his street, a smirk played at the corner of his mouth. He was home early, ready to surprise Veronica. Maybe she'd actually be impressed this time. Instead of making some snide comment about how he was married to his work, the house loomed before him, silent and still. No lights on. Strange. Veronica's yoga class should have ended an hour ago. Marcus entered, the silence hitting him like a physical force. "Veronica," he called out. No answer. He moved through the house, noticing little details that set his teeth on edge. 2 wine glasses on the coffee table. A hastily abandoned meal on the dining room table. The air thick with the scent of Veronica's favorite perfume, and something else. Something masculine. In the kitchen, Veronica's laptop sat open on the counter. Marcus paused, his hand hovering over the keyboard. He'd never invaded her privacy before. He'd been a Boy Scout, after all. Trustworthy, loyal, all that bullshit. But something wasn't right. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up, just like they did when a client was lying through their teeth. He tapped the spacebar, waking the screen. His eyes narrowed as he noticed a hidden folder on the desktop. It was labeled innocuously, "Fitness Progress." Marcus clicked it open, his stomach turning to lead as the contents loaded. Photos. Dozens of them. Intimate photos of their neighbor, Chad Blackwell. That smug bastard with his perfect abs and vapid smile. "What the hell?" Marcus muttered, scrolling through the damning evidence. Then he saw it. A document buried among the photos. Its innocuous title belied its chilling contents, MS Accident Plan. He opened it, his hands shaking with rage as he read. It wasn't just an affair. It was a goddamn conspiracy. His wife and that meathead were planning his accidental death. The document detailed various scenarios. A car accident on the winding road near their home, a tragic fall during a hike, even a potential poisoning disguised as food poisoning. The level of detail was sickening. They'd even researched life insurance policies and ways to make the deaths look accidental to maximize the payout. Marcus leaned back, his mind racing. He'd dedicated 5 years of his life to this marriage. 5 years of hard work, compromise, and what he thought was love. And this was how she repaid him? He heard the front door open, Veronica's laughter floating through the house. Quickly, he closed the laptop and moved to the living room, schooling his features into a mask of exhaustion. "Oh." Veronica startled as she saw him. "You're home early." Marcus nodded, watching her closely. The slight widening of her eyes. The way she subtly checked her appearance in the hallway mirror. "Yeah, wrapped up the project ahead of schedule." "That's great," Veronica said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "You must be exhausted. Why don't you go relax while I whip up some dinner?" Marcus forced a tired smile. "Sounds perfect. I'm going to grab a shower first." As he climbed the stairs, his mind was already formulating a plan. Veronica and Chad thought they were so clever. Well, they were about to learn just how badly they'd underestimated Marcus Steele. In the shower, Marcus let the hot water cascade over him, washing away the shock and leaving only cold, calculated anger. He replayed every moment of his marriage, searching for signs he might have missed. How long had this been going on? How many times had she lied to his face? When he came back downstairs, Veronica was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables with practiced ease. She looked up as he entered, her smile a perfect mask of affection. "Feeling better, honey?" she asked, her voice syrupy sweet. Marcus nodded, settling into a chair at the kitchen island. "Much. The hot water did wonders for my neck. You know how I get when I'm hunched over blueprints all day." Veronica sked sympathetically. "Poor baby. Maybe you should book a massage. I could recommend someone." "Let me guess," Marcus interrupted, his tone carefully neutral. "Chad knows a guy." Veronica's knife paused mid-chop. "Well, yes, actually. How did you know? Marcus shrugged, watching her face carefully. Just a guess. Chad seems to know everyone in the fitness world. He does have a lot of connections, Veronica agreed, resuming her chopping. It's good for his business. I'm sure it is, Marcus murmured, his mind racing. How many of those connections were actually lovers? How many other husbands had Chad cuckolded? As they ate dinner, Marcus played his part perfectly. He complained about work stress, praised Veronica's cooking, and even managed to laugh at her jokes. All the while, he was cataloging every micro-expression, every slight hesitation in her responses. So, he said casually as they cleared the table, "Any plans for the weekend?" Veronica shrugged, not meeting his eyes. "Oh, you know, the usual. Yoga, maybe some shopping." "Nothing exciting." Marcus nodded, filing away the lie. "Sounds nice. I might have to go into the office for a bit. This new project is really demanding." "Of course it is," Veronica muttered, a hint of bitterness in her tone. Marcus pretended not to hear, but inwardly his anger flared. How dare she act put upon when she was the one betraying their vows? As they settled in for a night of mindless TV, Marcus's mind was working overtime. He had a lot to do, and not much time to do it. But one thing was certain. Veronica and Chad were going to regret the day they decided to cross Marcus Steele. The next day dawned bright and clear, a mockery of the storm brewing in Marcus's heart. He maintained a facade of normalcy, kissing Veronica goodbye as she left for work. Then he settled in to observe Chad, the 40-year-old personal trainer who lived next door. It didn't take long for Chad's true colors to show. As Marcus pretended to work on his laptop on the front porch, he watched Chad berate a young delivery person who'd brought him a package. "Are you freaking stupid?" Chad's voice carried across the lawn. "I said leave it by the garage, not the front door. What if it had rained?" The delivery person, a teenager by the looks of it, mumbled an apology and quickly moved the package. Chad watched with a sneer, his muscled arms crossed over his chest. "Yeah, that's right. Run along, you useless waste of space," Chad muttered, just loud enough for Marcus to hear. Marcus's grip tightened on his coffee mug. What the hell did Veronica see in this asshole? As the day progressed, Marcus found more reasons to despise Chad. He watched as the trainer yelled at a group of children playing too close to his precious sports car, threatening to call their parents if they so much as breathed on it. Later that afternoon, the neighborhood gathered for an impromptu barbecue. Marcus stood by the grill, expertly flipping burgers while keeping an eye on Chad and Veronica. Chad swaggered over, a beer in hand. "Hey there, desk jockey. Surprised to see you out in the daylight. Thought you'd burst into flames or something." Marcus forced a chuckle. "Just because I don't spend all day flexing in a mirror doesn't mean I'm a vampire, Chad." Chad's eyes narrowed slightly. "Right. Well, better be careful with all those burgers. Don't want to ruin that dad bod you've been working on." Before Marcus could retort, Veronica appeared at Chad's side. Now, boys. Play nice." She laughed, the sound grating on Marcus's nerves. "Just some friendly neighborhood ribbing," Chad said, his arms snaking around Veronica's waist. Marcus watched as his wife leaned into the touch, her eyes sparkling with admiration. As the evening wore on, Marcus found himself eavesdropping on Chad's conversations. The man was insufferable, boasting about how he manipulated clients into buying expensive supplements and booking extra sessions. "It's all about making them feel insecure," Chad was saying to another neighbor. "Once they think they're not good enough, they'll do anything to improve." "That's where I come in." "Isn't that a bit unethical?" the neighbor asked hesitantly. Chad laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Ethics don't pay the bills, my friend. Besides, I'm doing them a favor. They want to look good. I help them look good. Everyone wins." Marcus watched as Veronica laughed too loudly at Chad's crude jokes, her hand resting on his arm far longer than necessary. It made him sick. "Hey, Marcus," Chad called out. "Why don't you tell everyone about that fancy building you're working on? I'm sure we'd all love to hear about. What was it again? Earthquake-proof houses?" Marcus gritted his teeth. "It's a revolutionary earthquake-resistant design for high-rise buildings. Actually, it could save thousands of lives in seismically active areas." Chad yawned theatrically. Sounds thrilling. Almost as exciting as watching paint dry. The group laughed, and Marcus saw Veronica roll her eyes. "Oh, Chad," she giggled, playfully swatting his arm. "Don't be mean. Marcus works very hard." "I'm sure he does," Chad smirked, his eyes roving over Veronica's figure. "But all work and no play makes Marcus a dull boy, doesn't it?" As the party wound down, Marcus noticed something that made his blood boil. Chad and Veronica, thinking no one was watching, exchanged a secret hand signal. A small gesture, easily missed if you weren't looking for it. But Marcus was looking, and he saw everything. He watched as Chad's fingers brushed against Veronica's wrist, tapping out a pattern. Veronica responded with a subtle nod, her eyes darting quickly to Marcus before returning to Chad. In that moment, Marcus knew. This wasn't just a fling. This was a full-blown conspiracy, right under his nose, and he'd been too blind, too trusting to see it. That night, as Veronica slept soundly beside him, Marcus sat in his home office, the soft glow of his computer screen illuminating his determined face. His fingers flew over the keyboard as he created a secure, encrypted document detailing his discoveries and plans. He paused, rubbing his eyes. The betrayal still stung, but he pushed the pain aside. There would be time for that later. Right now, he needed to focus. Marcus pulled up a search engine, looking for private investigators in the area. He needed someone discreet, someone with a stellar reputation. After an hour of research, he found his guy. Ex-military, top reviews, known for his discretion. Perfect. He drafted a quick email. "Mr. Hawkins, I find myself in need of your services. Discretion is paramount. Please contact me at your earliest convenience to discuss the details. Regards, Marcus Steele." Next, he drafted an email to his company's legal team. He needed to protect his new design, ensure that Veronica couldn't get her hands on it in case things went south. He hesitated for a moment before hitting send. There was no going back now. "Legal team, I've completed the preliminary designs for the earthquake-resistant structure. Given the sensitive nature of this innovation, I believe we need to take extra precautions to protect our intellectual property. Can we schedule a meeting to discuss patent applications and potential non-disclosure agreements for all involved parties?" Best. Marcus Steele. As the first light of dawn crept through the windows, Marcus began the process of creating a private trust for his assets. He'd be damned if Veronica and Chad got their hands on a single penny of what he'd worked so hard for. He created a new document outlining the structure of the trust. Steele Innovation Trust. Purpose: to protect and manage the intellectual property and assets related to Marcus Steele's engineering innovations. Beneficiary: Marcus Steele. Trustee: TBD, research reputable trust attorneys. Assets to be transferred: 1. Patents, pending and future. 2. Royalties from engineering designs. 3. Investment accounts. 4. Finally, exhausted but satisfied, Marcus crept back to the bedroom. Veronica was still asleep, her face peaceful. How could she look so innocent while plotting his death? Silently, he slipped a high-tech tracker into her purse. It was small, undetectable unless you knew exactly what you were looking for. And Veronica, in her arrogance, would never think to check. As he slid back into bed, Veronica stirred. "Everything okay, honey?" she mumbled, half asleep. Marcus allowed himself a small, grim smile. "Everything's fine, dear. Just fine." "Did you come to bed at all?" she asked, her eyes still closed. "Of course," Marcus lied smoothly. "Just got up early to do some work. You know how it is with this new project." Veronica made a non-committal noise, already drifting back to sleep. Marcus watched her, his mind racing with plans and contingencies. Little did Veronica know, the game was already changing, and Marcus Steele was playing to win. He had been underestimated his entire life, by his parents who thought he'd never amount to anything, by his professors who said his ideas were too ambitious, by competitors who thought they could outsmart him, and now, by his own wife and her lover. Well, they were all about to learn a valuable lesson. Marcus Steele didn't just play the game. He rewrote the rules. As he lay there, feigning sleep, Marcus began to formulate his next moves. He'd need evidence, irrefutable proof of their affair, and their murderous intentions. He'd need to secure his finances, his work, his future. And most importantly, he'd need to make sure that when he struck, it would be swift, decisive, and utterly devastating. Veronica and Chad thought they were so clever, so superior. They were about to discover just how wrong they were. Marcus allowed himself a small, grim smile. The hunt was on, and he was the predator now. Marcus Steele stood in the kitchen, his face a mask of practiced concern as he broke the news to Veronica. "Honey, I'm sorry, but I have to go on a business trip. It's last minute, but crucial for the project." Veronica's eyes widened, a flicker of excitement quickly suppressed. "Oh, how long will you be gone?" "A week, maybe 2, Marcus replied, watching her closely. "It's a big deal. Could really put us on the map." Veronica nodded, her lips curving into a sympathetic smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Of course, darling. Your work is important. I'll manage here." Marcus turned away, ostensibly to pack, hiding the cold smile that threatened to break his facade. Veronica's poorly concealed excitement was all the confirmation he needed. The bitch couldn't wait to have him out of the house. As he zipped up his suitcase, Veronica leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "You know, this might be good for us. Absence makes the heart grow fonder and all that." Marcus nodded, shouldering his bag. "You're right. Maybe we both need some time to appreciate what we have." He kissed her cheek, the gesture as hollow as their vows, and headed out the door. In the rearview mirror, he watched Veronica wave goodbye, her other hand already reaching for her phone. Probably texting Chad, he thought bitterly. Instead of the airport, Marcus drove to a nondescript hotel on the edge of town. As he checked in, he couldn't help but smirk. Veronica thought she was so clever, but she had no idea what was coming. In his room, Marcus set up his laptop, connecting to the tracker he'd planted in Veronica's purse. For hours, he watched the blinking move around town. Yoga class, lunch with friends, a stop at the mall, all perfectly innocent. Then, as evening fell, the dot began moving towards the outskirts of town. Marcus's jaw clenched as he watched it come to rest at the Starlight Motel, a seedy establishment known for its hourly rates and no questions asked policy. "Got you, you cheating bitch," he muttered, grabbing his keys. The Starlight Motel was even more depressing in person. Peeling paint, flickering neon, the whole 9 yards. Marcus parked across the street, his rental car innocuous in the shadows. He didn't have to wait long. A familiar sports car pulled into the lot, and Chad emerged, looking around furtively before heading to room 12. Moments later, Veronica's car arrived. She hurried to the same room, giggling as Chad pulled her inside. Marcus's hands tightened on the steering wheel, knuckles white. Part of him wanted to storm over there, to confront them, to make them pay. But no, he had to be smart about this. He had to be patient. He pulled out his phone, dialing the number of the private investigator he'd hired. "Mr. Hawkins? They're at the Starlight Motel, room 12. Get me everything you can." Hours passed. Marcus watched as other cars came and went, their occupants engaged in their own sordid affairs. Finally, close to midnight, Veronica emerged, her hair mussed, clothes askew. Chad followed, grabbing her ass as she got into her car. Marcus started his engine, following at a discreet distance as Veronica drove home. He watched her enter the house, watched the lights go on and off. All the while, his mind raced with plans and possibilities. His phone buzzed. A text from Hawkins. "Got audio? You need to hear this." Marcus drove back to the hotel, his heart pounding. In his room, he opened the audio file Hawkins had sent, his stomach churning as he listened. Veronica's breathy voice filled the room. "Oh, Chad, that was amazing. I can't wait until we don't have to sneak around anymore." Chad's smug reply made Marcus's blood boil. "Soon, baby. Once we take care of your hubby, we'll have it all. His money, his house, everything. You really think we can pull it off?" Veronica asked, a note of worry in her voice. "Trust me," Chad assured her. "I know a guy. Ex-military. He can make anything look like an accident. Marcus won't know what hit him." Marcus sat back, his mind reeling. It was one thing to suspect, another to hear it confirmed. They were really planning to kill him, to take everything he'd worked for. As the full weight of their betrayal sank in, Marcus felt something shift inside him. The last traces of love, of sentimentality, burned away, leaving nothing but cold, ruthless determination. They wanted to play dirty? Fine. He'd show them just how dirty he could get. As Veronica and Chad plotted his demise, Marcus worked tirelessly to secure his future. In his hotel room, surrounded by laptops and stacks of documents, he waged a silent war against those who sought to destroy him. First on his list, protecting his assets. Marcus had always been meticulous with his finances, a trait Veronica had often mocked. Now, that meticulousness would be her downfall. He spent hours on the phone with his lawyer, finalizing the transfer of his assets to the private trust he'd set up. Every penny he'd earned, every investment he'd made, all of it would be out of Veronica's reach. "You positive about this, Mr. Steele?" his lawyer asked, concern evident in his voice. "It's a drastic step." Marcus's laugh was hollow. "Trust me, Jack. It's necessary." Next, he turned his attention to his belongings. He couldn't empty the house. That would tip off Veronica. But he could secure the essentials. Under the guise of needing some files for his business trip, Marcus returned home while Veronica was out. He moved quickly, efficiently, packing away important documents, family heirlooms, and irreplaceable mementos. As he worked, he couldn't help but notice how little of the house actually felt like his. Veronica's taste dominated every room, her presence suffocating even in her absence. Good riddance, he thought, zipping up his bag. Back in his hotel room, Marcus drafted an anonymous tip to the police. He stared at the computer screen, weighing every word carefully. It had to be detailed enough to warrant investigation, but vague enough not to be traced back to him. Potential murder plot, overheard discussion of hiring a hitman, victim, Marcus Steele, suspects, Veronica Steele and Chad Blackwell. His finger hovered over the send button. Once he did this, there was no going back. But hadn't they already crossed that line? Hadn't they already decided his fate? He clicked send. With that done, Marcus turned his attention to the divorce petition. He'd been building his case meticulously, gathering every scrap of evidence, every damning photo and recorded conversation. Now, he laid it all out, a roadmap of Veronica's betrayal. As he worked, a notification popped up on his phone. An email from a headhunting firm he'd contacted. They'd found him a position, a prestigious engineering firm on the other side of the country, eager to bring his innovative designs on board. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. Everything was falling into place. While Veronica and Chad thought they were so clever, he was already 10 steps ahead. He picked up his phone, dialing the headhunter's number. "This is Marcus Steele. I'd like to discuss that job offer." Veronica Steele was not having a good day. It had started with a call from her bank, informing her that a large transfer she tried to make had been denied. Confused and irritated, she'd logged into their joint account, only to find it emptier than Death Valley in a drought. "What the hell?" she muttered, frantically checking other accounts. Nothing. It was all gone. She tried calling Marcus, but it went straight to voicemail. Typical. The one time she actually needed to talk to him, he was unreachable. As the day wore on, her anxiety grew. Something was wrong. She could feel it in her bones. When she heard a car in the driveway, she rushed to the window, relief flooding her as she recognized Marcus's vehicle. The relief was short-lived. Marcus walked in, his face an expressionless mask. Veronica forced a smile. "Honey, you're back early. How was the trip?" Marcus didn't answer. He just stood there, staring at her with cold, calculating eyes. It sent a shiver down her spine. "Marcus? What's wrong? Why isn't there any money in our accounts?" His laugh was harsh, humorless. "You mean, why isn't there any money for you to steal?" Veronica felt the blood drain from her face. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb, Veronica. It doesn't suit you." Marcus's voice was calm, controlled, but there was an undercurrent of rage that made Veronica take a step back. "I know everything. About you and Chad. About your little murder plot." Veronica's mind raced. How could he know? They'd been so careful. "Marcus, I don't know what you think you know, but save it. He cut her off. I've got pictures, recordings, enough evidence to bury you and your boy toy 6 feet under. Figuratively speaking, of course. I'll leave the literal burial plots to you two. Veronica felt panic rising in her chest. This couldn't be happening. It wasn't supposed to go like this. Marcus was supposed to be oblivious, helpless. Not this. You're paranoid. She tried, grasping at straws. You're imagining things. Maybe you need to see someone. Talk to a professional. Marcus's laugh cut her off. Gaslighting. Veronica? Really? That's the best you can do? Before she could respond, the front door burst open. Chad stormed in, his face red with rage. What the hell did you do, Steele? Marcus turned to Chad, his eyebrow raised. Ah, the cavalry arrives. Tell me, Chad, how are your clients reacting to the news of your unethical practices? Chad's face went from red to white in record time. You can't prove anything, can I? Marcus's smile was all teeth. You'd be surprised what people will say when they think no one's listening. Especially in seedy motel rooms. Veronica looked between the two men, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Marcus was supposed to be weak, pliable, easy to manipulate, and easier to eliminate. But the man standing before her was none of those things. He was hard, cold, ruthless. For the first time, Veronica felt a flicker of fear. You can't do this, she said, her voice shaking. I'll ruin you. I'll tell everyone at your company what a paranoid, delusional bastard you are. Marcus's smile didn't waver. Go ahead. In fact, let me save you the trouble. He pulled out his phone, showing them an email. I've already informed them of the situation. Guess what? They're backing me 100%. Turns out, they're not too fond of employees who conspire to murder their top engineers. Who knew? Chad, never one for patience, snapped. With a roar, he lunged at Marcus, fists swinging. But Marcus was ready. He sidestepped smoothly, using Chad's momentum to send him crashing into the coffee table. As Chad lay there, groaning amidst the shattered glass, Marcus turned back to Veronica. I've already filed for divorce. Don't bother contesting it. You won't win. Veronica felt tears welling up in her eyes. Not of sadness or remorse, but of pure, unadulterated rage. You bastard, she spat. You think you've won? This isn't over. Marcus's smile was cold as ice. Oh, but it is, Veronica. It's been over for a long time. You just didn't know it. With that, he turned and walked out, leaving Veronica and Chad to stew in the ruins of their failed plan. As the door closed behind him, Marcus felt a weight lift off his shoulders. It wasn't over, not by a long shot, but he'd taken back control, and he'd be damned if he ever let anyone take it from him again. The clock on Marcus Steele's nightstand glowed an eerie 2:37 a.m. as he silently slipped out of bed. Veronica's sleeping form didn't stir. Good. He needed the element of surprise. Marcus moved through the darkened house like a ghost, gathering the last of his belongings. Each step was calculated, each movement precise. He'd planned this moment for weeks, and now, finally, it was time to execute. In the study, he paused, allowing himself one last look at the life he was leaving behind. Photos of happier times mocked him from the walls. What a fool he'd been. With practiced efficiency, Marcus placed a thick manila envelope on Veronica's desk. Inside were copies of every damning piece of evidence he'd collected. Photos of her trysts with Chad, transcripts of their murderous plotting, bank statements showing their attempts to drain his accounts. Let her choke on it, he thought grimly. Next, he booted up his laptop. Time for Chad to face some consequences of his own. Marcus had spent days compiling a list of Chad's clients, along with detailed accounts of his unethical practices. Now, with a few clicks, anonymous tips were sent to each of them. Enjoy unemployment, you smug bastard. His final task was to send an email to his company's board of directors. He'd agonized over the wording for days, but in the end, simplicity won out. To the board, I regret to inform you that due to personal circumstances, I must tender my immediate resignation. I've uncovered a plot against my life, orchestrated by my wife and her lover. All relevant evidence has been turned over to the authorities. I want to assure you that my work, including the earthquake-resistant design, remains the property of the company. I trust you'll put it to good use. It's been an honor working with you all. Sincerely, Marcus Steele. As he hit send, Marcus felt a weight lift from his shoulders. It was done. He was free. The sky was just beginning to lighten as Marcus loaded the last box into his car. He paused, looking back at the house that had been his home for the past 5 years. It should have felt bittersweet, but all he felt was relief. As he pulled out of the driveway, Marcus allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. Veronica and Chad thought they were so clever, but they'd never seen him coming. Now, as the first rays of sunlight peeked over the horizon, Marcus Steele was driving towards a future they could never touch. Veronica Steele woke to an empty bed and an eerie silence. Something was wrong. She could feel it in her bones. "Marcus," she called out, her voice echoing through the empty house. No answer. Panic rising in her chest, Veronica stumbled out of bed. She rushed from room to room, each empty space amplifying her growing dread. In the kitchen, a single sheet of paper on the counter caught her eye. Divorce papers. Her hands shook as she read the details, each word a nail in the coffin of her carefully constructed life. "No, no, no," she muttered, frantically dialing Marcus's number. Straight to voicemail. She tried Chad next. He answered on the third ring, his voice groggy and irritated. "What? He's gone," Veronica hissed. "Marcus is gone, and he knows everything. What the hell are you talking about?" "He left divorce papers." "He must have," Veronica's voice caught as she spotted the manila envelope on her desk. Oh God. She ripped it open, photos and documents spilling out. Their secret meetings, their private conversations, all laid bare in high-resolution color. "Chad, we're screwed," she whispered. "Calm down," Chad snapped. "He can't prove anything. We'll deny it all." But even as he spoke, Chad's other line beeped. Then again, and again. "Hang on," he muttered, switching over. Veronica paced the kitchen, her mind racing. How had Marcus found out? How long had he known? And more importantly, what was he going to do? Chad's roar of rage answered at least one of those questions. "That son of a bitch," he bellowed as he switched back to Veronica. "He sent everything to my clients. Everything. They're all canceling their contracts. My reputation is ruined." Veronica felt the walls closing in. This couldn't be happening. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Marcus was supposed to be the victim, not them. A sharp knock at the door made her jump. Through the window, she saw 2 police officers standing on her porch, their faces grim. "Mrs. Steele," one called out. "We need to ask you some questions about a reported murder plot." Veronica's world tilted on its axis. This was it. The end of everything. As the officers led her away in handcuffs, Veronica caught sight of her reflection in the hall mirror. The woman staring back at her was a stranger, pale, disheveled, defeated. "What have I done?" she thought. But it was too late for regrets now. Across town, Chad Blackwell was facing his own reckoning. His phone wouldn't stop ringing, each call bringing another cancellation, another angry client demanding answers. He tried accessing the joint account he and Veronica had set up, the one they'd planned to use after Marcus was gone. But the account was empty, closed, as if it had never existed. "Shit," Chad roared, hurling his phone against the wall. How had it all gone so wrong? Marcus was supposed to be weak, pliable, an easy mark. Instead, he'd outplayed them at every turn. As Chad sank to the floor, his empire crumbling around him, he realized a terrible truth. They'd underestimated Marcus Steele, and now they were going to pay the price. The San Francisco skyline stretched out before Marcus Steele, a glittering promise of new beginnings. From his penthouse apartment, he could see the Bay Bridge, the Transamerica Pyramid, and in the distance, the rolling hills that surrounded the city. It had been 6 months since he'd left his old life behind, and he hadn't looked back once. His phone buzzed, a news alert lighting up the screen. Revolutionary earthquake-resistant design garners international acclaim. Marcus smiled. His work was finally getting the recognition it deserved. And more importantly, it was going to save lives. Another buzz. This one an email from his lawyer. "Mr. Steele, I'm pleased to inform you that the divorce has been finalized. As expected, the judge ruled entirely in your favor. Your ex-wife will receive nothing from the settlement. Congratulations on your fresh start. Best regards, Jack Thompson. Marcus let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. It was over. Really, truly over. He poured himself a glass of scotch, savoring the rich, smoky flavor as he looked out over the city. In the reflection of the window, he saw not the broken man Veronica and Chad had tried to make him, but a survivor, a victor. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from his sister. Just saw the news. Veronica and Chad are facing criminal charges for conspiracy to commit murder. Thought you'd want to know. You okay? Marcus typed back a quick reply. Never better. And it was true. For the first time in years, Marcus felt truly free. Free from betrayal, free from deceit, free from the suffocating weight of a loveless marriage. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, Marcus raised his glass in a silent toast. To new beginnings. To justice served. To the bright future he'd built for himself, brick by brick, from the ashes of betrayal. The Marcus Steele who had driven away from his old life 6 months ago was gone. In his place stood a man tempered by fire, stronger and more resilient than ever before. Let Veronica and Chad rot in their cells, he thought. He had a life to live, innovations to create, a world to change. Marcus Steele was just getting started. The applause was deafening as Marcus Steele cut the ribbon, officially opening the first building constructed using his revolutionary earthquake-resistant design. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, but Marcus remained calm and collected. This was his moment, the culmination of years of hard work and sacrifice. And no one, not Veronica, not Chad, not anyone, could take it away from him. As he stepped up to the podium to give his speech, a news ticker caught his eye. Local woman and fitness trainer sentenced in murder-for-hire plot. For a moment, memories of his old life threatened to surface. The betrayal, the pain, the anger. But Marcus pushed them aside. That was the past. This, right here, was his future. With a satisfied smile, Marcus turned back to the crowd. They were waiting for him, eager to hear from the man who had revolutionized structural engineering. And he was ready to deliver. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice strong and clear. Today marks not just the opening of a building, but the dawn of a new era in construction. As he spoke, Marcus felt a sense of peace wash over him. He had faced the storm, weathered the betrayal, and come out stronger on the other side. The future was bright, and Marcus Steele was ready to embrace it with open arms.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy the story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.